Boom. All right. Hey, everybody. Those of you just joining us in the video archive, welcome to Olami Inspire Online. What a fun time we've got in store for tonight. We'll be learning about chosen people, and we've got a guest speaker, Rabbi Tuli Bricks. He's from Israel, but thank God he happens to be in New Rochelle, New York. So he'll be he doesn't have to worry about getting up at 4 in the morning to teach our good. So you guys, I hope you're all extremely excited. Let me share my screen, and then we'll get this party started. We gotta get this party started right. Started right. All right, here we go. Move myself over here. We're gonna be talking about something today, which on the one hand is extremely controversial. And yeah, I don't know why it's controversial. I think people get bent out of shape for no reason. Once you understand what the idea of chosen people is, at least how we define chosen people in Judaism, I think you're gonna, I don't know. I can't make predictions for you. I can't predict what you're gonna think, what you're gonna say, but I believe that you may not find it as controversial as you think. I will say something very interesting, that it's something that winds people up and gets people all, get bent out of shape. And we've already had a few people, even though I haven't mentioned chosen people at all, we've already had a few people discuss it and raise it in their essays. And so hopefully we'll get a nice definition, a working definition that's a bit different than probably what most of us assume. And ba-bang! There you go. I said, people ask about one-on-one meetings. So one-on-one meetings are like this. If you have a local representative, your local representative, two things should happen. A, you should have received an email from BD Deutsch in Israel introducing you and your local representative, and hopefully your local rep followed up to schedule a specific time. If your local rep hasn't been in touch, or you don't have a local rep, so it's me. And I have been in touch with everyone. 2 people since today who had local reps have been switched to me. So I'll be emailing you pretty soon. The local reps could be 20 to 30 minutes. You hang out. Hopefully you get a free coffee out of it. With me, they're only 15 minutes, but we do it online. We do it on Skype, or I was told during one of my one-on-one meetings that Skype isn't cool anymore, which thank God. Great. Rosanna is saying that she emailed me a Facebook question. I won't acknowledge it now, but I will check. Okay, fantastic. And no free coffee with me, but we can drink coffee together online if that makes you feel good. And we have Skype. I did a lot. Most people, I think we did it on FaceTime. FaceTime is fat if you like FaceTime. We could also do it on I don't know, a GChat. I've done a couple of Google Hangouts. If you haven't heard from your representative, and if you don't like coffee, you can have tea. Do whatever you want. Okay, if you haven't heard from me, Rep, be in touch with me, and I will look it up tomorrow. All right? If you haven't heard from me, Rep, you haven't been introduced, nothing's happened, send me an email, and I will get on the case. Because I'm like that. So today we're talking about chosen people. Chosen for what? Is the concept of chosen people racist or elitist? And once we've got a working definition, the second question is going to make sense as well. Is it true? Are they supposed to ask anything specific? Zoe is asking. No, just to schmooze with you. Make sure you're a human being and not a bot. And, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to raise them with your local rep. Just to get that's how it works. All right? But the people that I meet online, I'm almost able to confirm they're not bots, though it might just be some very tricky AI that I'm working with. But all right. So I'm going to attempt to solve 3 riddles, or at least pose 3 questions and answer 3 questions in today's class. Number 1, why are people bothered by the Jewish claim of chosenness? This drives people crazy. So number 1, I want to answer that question. Number 2, what does the Jewish concept of chosen people mean? And what are the implications? What are the implications? Meaning, chosenness may not mean what you think it means. And so, okay, once I give a definition, you'll see that maybe something's supposed to happen by the Jewish people being a chosen people. So did it happen? And are the Jewish people really chosen? That's a bit of a loaded question, which I'll probably skirt around. But anyways, there we go. So we'll be looking at that. chosen to suffer. I think we're chosen to kvetch, or chosen to eat. All right. So the first question I want to address is, why are people bothered by this Jewish claim of chosenness? So I so often focus on fringe groups. I'm not going to focus on the fringe group this week. I'm going to focus on a very mainstream group, which is let me just preface it like this. Every group, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a group. I'm sure they exist, so don't whatever, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find a group that doesn't consider themselves chosen to some extent, that sees themselves as having some, whether it's a special relationship with God or a special destiny or a special mission or somehow having a responsive, whatever it is. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a group that doesn't at least see themselves as something chosen. We're chosen to be gorgeous. I'm gorgeous. And to bring a dwelling place. Okay, we'll see if that's true, Justine. Let's look at that. All right, anyway, so the first group I want to talk about is the Protestants. So Protestant Christianity is not some fringe, like, wacko group. I don't know if there are more Protestants than Catholics in the world, but they are definitely a major player on the world stage. I mean, the numbers of Christians in the world are in the billions. I'll give you a number later on. It's a lot of people. And Protestantism, as you know, was everybody knows their world history. It was a split from the Catholic Church. So the second generation of great Protestant thinkers, the first generation would have been Martin Luther. He battled against the great Catholic theologian Erasmus, right? So the great thinkers of the second generation of Protestant thinkers was John Calvin. So Calvin and Calvin's flavor, Calvin's brand of Protestantism there is a Calvinist brand. Are there Calvinist churches? I don't know of any around me, but there definitely exist or have existed. But Calvin's theology, his philosophy, definitely permeates many Protestant denominations, be they Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist, Quaker, take your pick. So anyway, so Calvin taught something called the elect. You ever heard of the elect? What does it mean to be the elect? So the way I understand the concept of being the elect is that, Calvin Coolidge wasn't he one of the presidents of the United States? Anyways, being the elect is like this. There's a concept that God, when he created the universe, created a finite number of souls. And those souls are destined to go to heaven and bask in God's glory for eternity. They come down to this world. I don't remember what the purpose of them coming to this world is in the first place, but ultimately they fill their destiny in this world, and then eternity is spent basking in God's presence upstairs, okay? What about everybody else? What if you're not one of those finite souls? So it doesn't matter if you're a nice person, if you do good deeds, you help people out, you're destined to burn in the fiery pits of hell forever. Sucker. So anyway, how do you know, and this is the thing, how do you know if you're one of the elect? I mean, obviously, who doesn't want to be elect? You want to be on the right team. You want to be in that special club. Simple. It's like this. If God has made it in such a way that you're able to find it in your heart to accept the gospel, you can accept the gospel. That's the proof that you're amongst the elect. If you can't accept the gospel, you're going to have a hot butt, buddy. All right? Look at this. I found this on some evangelical website, but the guy wrote really well. He says like this. Some woman had written him a letter freaking out. Am I amongst the elect? I don't want to burn in hell. And he said to her, don't worry about it. There's no way you could ever know. He's speaking about this woman. He said, there's no way she could ever know if she was among the elect except by believing the gospel. There's no way she could ever know that she is among the non-elect except by dying in unbelief. It's really quite easy for her to overcome her fear of being among the non-elect. Repent and believe the gospel. If she does, Jesus said, he will in no way ever cast her out. If she says, but how can I believe the gospel if I'm not among the elect? If I'm among the non-elect, the answer again is believe the gospel and thereby know that you are among the elect. Pretty cool, huh? there are those who are non-elect, ultimately don't care one way or another. Now, how does this make you feel? You know, if you're a Jewish person, ostensibly, you're not believing the gospel. It means you're burning in hell. Now think about it. This is not some fringe cult. This is mainstream Protestant thought. That means you might have some neighbor. Most of us live in, you know, mixed neighborhoods with people of all faiths. And you probably have a nice Protestant neighbor who's very nice, who thinks about you, bakes cookies, goes to your bake sales, whatever it is you do, and sits up crying at night, upset that you, the nice Jewish person down the street, is going to burn in hell. You know, that's a chosen people concept. That's a chosen people mentality. Does that drive you crazy? You're Catholic. I was going to say, Kat, I didn't want to bring it up. I remember the first time when I was in college and I came in contact with this. I grew up in the suburbs. Nobody knew anything. I remember I was in music college, and I met my first evangelical Christian. Nice guy, really nice guy. And he was not preaching. He didn't testify. He wasn't trying to convert me. But my friend got into an argument with him. And so they started talking about whether you're going to go to heaven or not. And this guy was his belief was that if you don't believe the gospel, you're not one of us, you're going to burn in hell. And I remember I couldn't get my head around that. I was like, well, I'm a good person. Or not even me. What if you're a good person? You know, you do nice things. You run charities, you help people out, you give your life for a cause. Are you going to burn in hell? All right. Anyways, that's a chosen people. That's a chosen people mentality. Okay. Are you bent out of shape about that? Does that bother you? I don't know. It doesn't really, at the end of the day, I don't really care. I don't know. And it's not just Protestantism. I'm not familiar enough with Catholic theology, though I'm sure they have some similar type idea. Islam, for sure, has a similar type belief system. What's interesting about Islam is that it's not guaranteed that if you're a Muslim, you're going to go to heaven, but you have to be a Muslim to go to heaven. Right? So if you're not a Muslim, fire, hell. If you are a Muslim, now maybe you got a chance. So, you know, it's not all Christians believe this, Michelle, I'm sure. And that's like I said, I don't know Catholicism, but this is a major tenet of the elect is a major tenet of Calvinist thought. And Calvinism it's a deep stream in Protestantism. My point is not to denigrate Christians or to make fun, God forbid. My point is to show that this concept of chosen people, this concept of being the elect, this concept of being special is something that's intrinsic to religions around the world. It's articulated within Protestant Christianity very specifically. Okay. If you ever check, I'm not going to get into now, but if you ever check out the theology of the Nation of Islam, not mainstream Islam, but Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam, you'll find a very similar idea that if you're not part of their group, there's some serious problems. You may even be some kind of genetic mutant. You know, okay. You know, do you care? Doesn't bug me. This is not necessarily religious belief either. You'll find nations believe this principle as well. So the United States has a concept called manifest destiny. Manifest destiny. Manifest destiny. So in the manifest destiny is a concept which has warped over and transformed over the generations. So in the 1800s, this was the justification for American expansion westward, meaning American Protestants who settled in the 13 colonies, their justification for moving west, conquering these lands, pushing out the indigenous peoples there, etc., and so forth, and whatever bad that they did, you know, was because they were destined by God to rule over the Western Hemisphere, okay? In the 20th century, this concept morphed into really more of this idea of the global police. I mean, it didn't really kick off until World War II, though World War I, Woodrow Wilson's, justification for American entry into World War I was to make the world safe for democracy. Why is it America's responsibility to make the world safe for democracy? So concepts manifest destiny. And this, by the way, it's a bipartisan thing. So John F. Kennedy, a Democrat, it was his justification for American involvement in Vietnam. And I mean, it also had to do obviously with curbing the communist threat and yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, it comes back to this principle because it's an emotional principle and it gets people all excited, okay? George Bush, a Republican, used that to justify American entry into Iraq. I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but remember all this talk about turning Iraq into a democratic republic and blah blah blah. I mean, okay, the point is that ironically, and I'm not here to get into politics. Ironically, Trump in 2016 ran against this idea, which is very interesting, very very interesting. To the extent that Code Pink of all groups endorsed him, or at least praised him because he was running as an anti-Iraq war candidate. But anyways, be that as it may, the concept of manifest destiny, it's an American thing. Now, same thing, it's not just American as well. I mean, it's the justification for Soviet, not today, Russian expansion. Russia feels it has a right to conquer the Ukraine. Ultimately, I think there's probably ambition within Russia to reclaim the territories that were once under their thumb during the heights of the Soviet Union. Japan and their concept of the South Pacific and why they extended Greater Japan into China and into the Koreas. China, the reverse, and it's probably part of the justification for Chinese domination of Tibet, and on and on and on and on and on. We can go on and on with examples like this. The point is that I think you'd be hard-pressed to travel around the world and find a group that doesn't have some type of chosen people mentality, where it's not just greed and money, though it may be at the heart of it, but ultimately there's some type of philosophical or quasi-religious or even flat-out religious rationalization for their beliefs and their conquest and their behavior and their whatever. Okay, so if everybody feels that way, so why are you giving us poor Jews a hard time? We're just like everybody else. We also were chosen. Why? You get it? So let me give you an example. Why are people so bothered by the Jewish claim as opposed to other claims? So I'm going to say something that's a little controversial, but we're friends. We can handle a little controversy together. So I'll say it like this. Let's pretend you came to my house and you're sitting on the couch. Now, I don't have a 5-year-old, but let's pretend I have a 5-year-old, okay? And so you're sitting on the couch, and my 5-year-old goes to you and he says to you, "You're stupid. You're stupid." How do you feel? Do you feel stupid? Are you gutted? Is your life ruined? What do you do? You're devastated? You'll probably laugh or say, "Shut up, kid." I mean, whatever. It's like, these are just Hasidim celebrating Purim. I just think it's a beautiful picture, Heather. I don't know. I think it's great. Anyways, but I think great. They're all wearing fezzes. For some reason in Israel, the universal costume for Purim is a fez. They're just drunk and happy, Anyways, all right. Anyway, so if a 5-year-old tells you you're stupid, you don't care. It means nothing. I've actually seen adults get upset when a 5-year-old called them stupid, and it's embarrassing. That's okay. Let's pretend something else happens. Let's pretend you're in college and you're in a course for your major, and it's something you're really into, and you're with your favorite professor. He's just, someone you love, and he assigns a paper, and you write the paper. You don't wait till the last minute. You actually spend a few weeks working on it. You do your research. You're excited. Hand in the paper. Get the paper back. F. Okay. How'd you get an F? Unbelievable. Oh, so you make a private meeting with the professor, and he said, and he's a nice person, respectful, but he says to you basically, "Look, you're not that bright. This field really isn't right for you. You don't get it. Maybe you should look into something else." How do you feel? Do you feel the same way you felt if a 5-year-old called you stupid? No. You're probably gutted. Your life is over. Your heart's been ripped from your chest and thrown in the mud. I mean, okay, what's the difference between the professor and the 5-year-old kid? The difference is credibility. The difference is it means something. The difference is you believe it. You believe it. 5-year-old kid, what's a 5-year-old kid know about stupid anyways? And who's a 5-year-old kid? It's just, 5-year-old kids say anything. It means nothing. When the professor says it, professor is someone who knows what he's talking about. It means something. There's credibility there. It means something. And so it affects you and impacts you because you believe it. I want to suggest, like I said, this is a controversial idea, but I think that's true. The entire world claims to be chosen. Nobody really cares. I mean, obviously, you're a Native American and Americans are expanding and conquering your community and perpetrating crimes against your people. So yes, obviously you're going to care. But theoretically, in general, nobody really cares about other people's beliefs that much. The fact that the Protestant thinks you're going to burn in hell, okay, it doesn't really bother you. Why do people get bent out of shape about the Jews? Why does it bother them so much? I think because they believe it. I don't know why. I think, but somewhere in their spiritual subconscious, somewhere they believe it. They didn't believe it. It wouldn't bother them. Everybody says all sorts of things. Everybody claims all sorts of things, all sorts of crazy ideas. The Jews make the claim and it bothers them. Maybe there's a level of belief there. It's food to chew upon. Okay. Now, just because Jews may or may not be chosen doesn't mean Jews are better. And I want to emphasize this, but it's more of a side point. But I just want to emphasize. I want to emphasize this idea. And this really helped us define really chosenness, at least level 1 chosenness for our class. So I don't want to get political. Okay, so if you don't like our current president, think of the last president or the president before that. But bottom line with the president, do you really care? Does it bother you that the president, no politics, Sarah. Anyways, do you really care that the president gets to fly? It's okay. Do you really care that the president gets to fly in Air Force One and gets a security detail and gets a fancy limousine with bulletproof glass? Do you really care? You don't care. Yours doesn't make. You know? Why don't you care? The reason you don't care is because the president is the president. And along with, it'd be fun, too. I would love to, be president. I don't know if I want to be president, but, anyways, the reason... You're not jealous, though. The reason why is because part and parcel with those perks of the job come serious responsibilities. Meaning, if there's a world crisis somewhere half around the planet, a different time zone, you're going to get a call at 3 a.m. and you got to get up and you've got to call your advisors and you've got to make a decision and then you've got to be looking fresh and smiley face and continue with your regular schedule that morning when you go in front of the press to explain the American position. That's just the way it is. Your vacations don't really exist. Your entire life is just that's it. You got the nuclear football. Exactly. In other words, your entire life is, at least while you're president, you're absorbed with this. Now, people who become president want to be president. There's probably a lot of ego involved. But bottom line is that the perks of the job are there because they go along with the responsibilities. And the Jewish people, we have a similar thing. I'm sure there are some people in our group who are Kohanim. Anybody a Kohen? If you don't know, you're probably not. Generally speaking, if you're a Kohen, it's because your father was a Kohen. So if your father's a Kohen, tells you you're a Kohen as well. Okay, great. Josephine, you're a Kohen? You're an Israelite. I'm an Israelite too. All these things are great. So being a Kohen, you should know. A Levi, okay, good. Levis are good. Kohanim are from the Levi family, but Kohanim don't have the same. Levis don't have the same perks that Kohanim get. So Kohanim get all sorts of nowadays, it's not so much because nowadays we live in exile. We don't have a temple in Jerusalem. But nowadays, so the people who are Kohanim still, you always get called up to the Torah first. You get to lead the blessing after the meal. There's a few things you have in biblical times or Torah times. So the Kohanim, they get all sorts of gifts. They don't only get those privileges, but about a third of your income in various tithes and taxes actually go to supporting the Kohanim. They get all sorts of perks, all sorts of things. They get to go into the inner chambers of the temple. Great. But that comes with massive responsibility, not just limitations in terms of who they can marry and going to funerals and mourning the loved ones, but on a bigger level, the amount of work they have to do. You're never spending a holiday with your family. You're always be spending your holiday in the temple working. Plus your shifts throughout the year, holding on a regular job is going to be very difficult. So you get a lot of perks, but those perks come with a lot of responsibility. That's the same way. On some level, and we're going to look at this, the Jewish people, at least step one, understanding the concept of chosen people, the idea of a Kohen can marry a non-Kohen. Yes, they can. They can. It's just whatever. I don't want to get into the limitations of the Kohen right now. But anyway, so bottom line is the Jewish people in the Torah were called Mamleches Kohanim, or a nation of Kohanim. Okay. I have to define the words. Okay. We have to define the word Kohen in a second. But the bottom line is that, so part of being chosen is being a nation of Kohanim. So maybe or maybe not there's perks, but those perks come with responsibility. And that's the main point. The main point is that being chosen means you have responsibility. Now, what does responsibility mean? So let's look at the sources, the concept of chosenness, the concept of responsibility, and then we'll take it a step further and we'll look at specifically what your responsibility as a Jewish person is in terms of through the prism of chosenness. So there's two sources that we have for chosen. The first one is Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6. It says, God chose you to be his treasured people. The term for treasured people is Am Sagula, a special nation from all the nations on the earth. Aw, so nice. Okay, but we modify that. It's actually was said earlier in the book of Exodus. This is chapters 19, verses 5 and 6. God says to the Jewish people, and now, if you listen to my voice, this is God speaking. Now, if you listen to my voice and guard my covenant, you will be a treasured people, same term again, because all the world is mine. And you will be to me a nation of leaders. In Hebrew, that's Mamleches Kohanim, the Goy Kadosh, a holy people. Now, it's interesting, if you look in the commentary, even though it says Mamleches Kohanim, a nation of Kohanim, the translation that most people give, a nation of priests, isn't really correct. I spoke about Rashi in an earlier class. Rashi was the great Torah commentary, lived in the 1000s, a little before the Crusades. Rashi is an acronym, stands for Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. Anyways, he lived in France. So Rashi says, and he brings sources from the rest of the Bible to show Kohanim doesn't necessarily mean priest, it means leader. David's sons, King David, his sons were called Kohanim. King David was not a Kohen. So how could his sons be called Kohanim? Because Kohen doesn't just mean priest, Kohen means leader. Okay, so it's a leader. So you're a nation of leaders, and specifically a holy people. What's it mean to be holy? Holy means that you've distinguished yourself. You distinguish yourself, you're separate. Holiness is something separate. Now, there's a religious connotation to that as well, but you're separate. Okay, so here's the concept, all right? To become a nation of leaders means what? Look at the beginning of the verse. You have to listen to my voice and guard my covenant, okay? In other words, you have to take personal responsibility for the mission of the Jewish people. If you take personal responsibility for the mission of the Jewish people, that's what's going to make you a nation of leaders, because you're taking responsibility for the mission of the Jewish people. You're leading, and that's what's going to distinguish you to make you into a Goy Kadosh, to make you into a holy people. And that is what it means to be chosen. Being chosen means to take responsibility for the Torah's message, the Torah's mission. And specifically, by doing that, you distinguish yourself, you become a holy people. That's what it means to be chosen, okay? Now, there is one opinion there's a debate amongst, we're going with the second one. The first opinion would be, what it means is you're chosen. What does chosen mean? Chosen means you have the opportunity to take responsibility and distinguish yourself. The other opinion, which is the one I'm going with through this class, is that it's not that you have the opportunity, you have to take responsibility. If you take responsibility, that's how you distinguish yourself. Either way, whether you have the opportunity or not, is irrelevant. Bottom line, what makes you a chosen people is not some magical cosmic fairy dust that's sprinkled upon the Jews that make us holy and wonderful and better and whatever. God forbid. What makes us chosen is that we take responsibility. We take responsibility to push the Torah's message. By taking responsibility, that's how we distinguish ourselves and become holy. Isn't that beautiful? Now, the obvious question that you're probably all screaming right now is, Zvi, what is the Torah's message? What is the mission that we need to take? What's our job? Sarah has her thinking cap on. Yes, all right? So the mission of the Jewish people is to push the Torah's agenda. And what is the Torah's agenda? Ethical monotheism. Ethical monotheism. All right? Let's give Sarah an award. What What is ethical monotheism? So ethical monotheism, it means, the Manitas are here. Everybody get up to Daniel and Lal. They had some internet problems, but now they are back. Yeah! Woohoo! All righty. So what is ethical monotheism? So the manifestation of ethical monotheism means that you're going to see, first of all, concept of ethical monotheism means that A, we're monotheistic. What does it mean, monotheistic? There's a misconception out there. People think monotheistic means you believe in two gods, I believe in one, I'm a monotheist. That's not really the Jewish understanding of monotheism. The Jewish understanding of monotheism is not just, it's that we believe in one God, but we believe in that one God by default because our basic belief is God's oneness. What does that mean, God's oneness? It means that God is the only power, this is a great topic, which I'm not getting into. It's a class in and of itself. But it means that God's the only power, the only reality, is intimately involved in the running and maintenance of our world. And so God's the only power, the only reality. So we live within context of the reality. That doesn't mean that everybody has a piece of God within them. That would be pantheism. God doesn't have parts. What it means is that each of us is a manifestation of God's will. We live in God's world, and we're part of God's world. If you believe that God has parts, or God is a reality that could be divided, or that you are God because you have a piece of God, that would be polytheistic, which is not a Jewish idea. Obviously, Torah is against that. But it means that God's the only power, the only reality. So by default, in believing in God's oneness, therefore, there's only one God. That's the Jewish idea. It's a powerful idea. Next week, when we discuss free will, I'll answer a lot of the obvious questions that should be driving you crazy right now. But hopefully we'll answer at least some of the questions. All right. Now, the second thing, like we learned last week in the class on Shabbos, the implication of believing in God being that reality, that only power, is A, Shabbos, the idea that life is incredible. It's great to be here. It's so great to be alive. Life is awesome. And then the basics of morality, being a good person. You have to be a good person. We have a specific definition of what being a good person is. Bottom line, though, and this is the important part, is that if you live with this concept of ethical monotheism, you live with this reality that God's the only power, God's the only reality, and the implication of that beyond the joy and pleasure of being alive is basic responsibility, and being a decent person. So you'll see a number of things manifest in the world. What are they? Things, I have 6 on my list here. Maybe you can come up with more. But the 6 things you'll have here is, number 1, respect for human life. Respect for human life. Number 2, peace. And when I say peace, I mean peace on all levels, whether it's global, communal, personal, internal. Justice and equality. You want to live in a world where people are treated justly and there's equality. Okay. That was redundant. Education. You believe in the value and concept of education. Family. The primacy and importance of family, and then ultimately social responsibility. Social responsibility, meaning that it's, you want to live the change. You want to live the change you want to see in the world. Okay? That is that's the ultimate manifestation of ethical monotheism, that we're going to see these things manifest in the world. And if you look through history, since the dawn of Judaism, you'll see that from a pretty pagan and violent and brutal world where infanticide was, you're born a girl and you're firstborn, too bad, you're dead, we're waiting for a boy, The concept of infanticide, child sacrifice, eating your enemies, a world at war, a world of no justice, might makes right, a world of education only for the elite, not universal education, a world where family is whatever, sleep with whoever you want, in a world where you don't feel social responsibility, it's all about me. These ideas have been pushed away, and over time we've come to a world where these ideas are very manifest. But I'm jumping the gun a little bit on that. Anyway, so let me just say those things again: respect for human life, peace, justice and equality, education, family, and social responsibility. That's the ultimate manifestation of ethical monotheism. So far, so good. So what does it mean? Chosenness means, being the chosen people means that we take responsibility, like we saw in the verse. You take responsibility to push the Torah's agenda, which is ethical monotheism. And by pushing this idea, we distinguish ourselves as a holy people. That's what it means to be chosen. That's the implication from the verse. We're a chosen people. We're pushing the agenda. But there's a huge problem, and if you know a little bit about Judaism, you should be screaming, "Svi, there's a huge problem." Here's the problem. You have to do all these things, but you have to do them with your hands tied behind your back. Okay? Thank you, Nina. There's a huge problem. You have to do with your hands tied behind the back. The obvious first one is Judaism is a non-proselytizing, non-missionizing religion. We don't stand, I mean, you could, I guess, if you want to, but we don't stand on a soapbox in the middle of the street and yell out, "Repent, the end is near." Judaism, anybody has converted to Judaism or is going through the process of conversion or knows about conversion, converting to Judaism is a pain in the butt. It's a multi-year process. It's really hard. Part of it is because we believe that you don't have to be Jewish to go to heaven. Like anybody, if you're decent, moral people go to heaven. Okay, you don't have to be Jewish. Being Jewish means that you're buying into this mission and this agenda as well. It's hard to convert to Judaism. Not only a non-proselyte, the concept of converting by the sword, of sending out missionary groups to convert, that's not a Jewish idea. There was only one point in history where Jews actually tried to force conversions. It was during the Roman period where they tried to convert the Edomite community, and they're chastised in the Talmud. Like, that was wrong. You don't do that. The Maccabees were not forcing conversions. Maccabees were standing up for Jewish values, which were under oppression in the time of the Greeks. But anyways, Judaism, we don't believe in we don't believe in forcible conversion. People who convert to Judaism become Jewish because they want to. They want to be a part of the Jewish team. They want to be a part of the Jewish mission, and they choose to join up. We actually, to take this point even more extreme, in the days of King David and King Solomon, they banned conversion. They weren't allowing people in. It's like, you got to join us when it's hard. It's like I live in Boston, so I moved here. I remember, I think it was 2004 when the Red Sox finally won the World Series after 86 years of not winning the World Series. There are people who had spent their entire lives never seeing the Red Sox win. Okay, great. Then there's all these people jumping on the bandwagon. Who are you? Get out of here. People have been dreaming about this for 86 years. Go away. Anyways, so not to make a joke of it, but that's similar to the Jewish idea. Messianic times, it's too late. You can't convert to Judaism at that point. You got to join up when it's hard to be Jewish. When you're standing against the world, so to speak, and you're think about it, we're called in Hebrew. We're called Hebrews. We're called Hebrew. The word Hebrew in Hebrew is ivri, which means that you're on the other side, ovar, to cross over. We are on one side of the river, like Abraham. The rest of the world is on the other side. It's, it ain't so simple being Jewish. All right. Anyways, but to take this even a step further, the Torah makes it even more difficult. You can't think of all the laws of the Torah that isolate and keep the Jewish people to themselves. Not supposed to intermarry, not allowed to intermarry. You have to keep kosher, and like we spoke about, the kosher laws they limit your social interaction. You have to keep Shabbos, which again, you can be integrated in a part of the world, but by keeping Shabbos, you're also limited. If you're also praying daily, or even just praying on the Sabbath, you're living in a community that's walking it, so you're living by yourselves. And really, the ideal from the Torah is that we're supposed to be living together in Israel. I'm excited. You're asking a great question. I'm not going to get into it right now, but we can talk about it another time, just because it's a huge topic. But bottom line is that we really have to be living. We have to be living together in the land of Israel. So think about it. The same Torah that's saying that you need to. The same Torah. There are blonde Jews. Sarah, my son, for example, my oldest son, 22, blonde. Good-looking guy. Anyways, all right. So my daughter's also blonde. How? Look at me. I don't know, but there you go. Anyways, but the same Torah that's saying you need to take responsibility, you need to push the Torah's agenda, is also saying you have to do this, but you have to do this by saying, You have to do this by living in Israel and living amongst yourselves. How are you supposed to do this? It's crazy. You're supposed to do it. So comes the Torah, or really the Bible, to say, don't worry about it. You don't have to go out and go to the world, because the world is going to come to you. It says in Isaiah, I, God, have called you in righteousness. I took your hand and created you and made you a treasured people. There's that term again, treasured people, to be a light unto the nations. Okay, to be a light unto the nations. To be a light unto the nations. Okay, now specifically, what does it mean to be a light unto the nations? So this is earlier in Isaiah, and that idea of light unto the nations is the definition of this verse here. Many people, this is prophesying about the future. Many people will go and say, come, let us go to the mount of God, to the temple of God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways and we may walk in his paths. For the Torah will go forth from Zion and the word of God from Jerusalem. You know this verse? Ki mitzion teitze Torah udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. Ki mitzion teitze Torah. You know this? Udvar Hashem. Okay, whatever. Anyways, what's the point? The point is that, what does it mean to be a light unto the nations? It means that the light unto the nations is going to come out from Torah. The world is going to look at the Jewish people, and by looking at the Jewish people, being a light unto the nation, they're going to learn from the Jewish people. That's what it's, in other words, it's not a practical thing, it's a mystical thing. What is your job? Your job is not to preach the Torah, your job is to live the Torah. Don't go out and talk about change, be the change, live the change, live your values. Don't talk about your values, don't try to convince other people of your values, live your values. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Live the values you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to be. Isn't that great? That's the Jewish idea. Live the values. Live your ideals. Live the concepts that you represent. Be an honest manifestation and representation of these ideas. And for some reason, the world will stand up and take notice. So the obvious question then, if this is what chosenness means, did it happen? So some of the stuff I'm going to show you, you may or may not buy, but I think overall, it's a pretty powerful idea. You look at the news. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. You'll look at the news. You'll notice that the world is obsessed with the Jewish people. Specifically, the world is obsessed with Israel, right? During the last decade, Israel received 75 times more press coverage per capita than any other area in the world. I mean, think about this. You've got these press corps, and they're churning out 900 English language reports every day. Israel is the most scrutinized story in the world. All right. In 2002, the Arab-Israeli conflict accounted for 58% of all foreign coverage on American nightly news. Now, keep this in mind, because at the exact same time, you had heavy fighting in Afghanistan by U.S. troops in Afghanistan. That was only 4% of coverage. Israel today receives more news coverage than China, Africa, and India combined. I'm sorry about leaving out the Oxford comma, by the way. In other words, the world is obsessed. You look at the news, the world is obsessed with Israel. The world is obsessed with Jews. Look at the Jewish religion. They call it the three great Abrahamic faiths, okay? The three faiths that are derived from Judaism. It's really, we're a little blip on the screen. We're 14 million people. Christianity, both Catholicism and the various Protestant denominations, is about 2 billion people. Islam is about 1.5 billion people and growing. You're looking at 55.6% of the planet believes something that's a derivation of Judaism. It's unbelievable. Our ideas are dominant. The world seems to be obsessed with us, and our ideas seem to be taking hold. It's unbelievable. Let's take this a step further. You look at the UN. Let's pretend everything the anti-Israel crowd says about the Jewish people is 100% true. Okay? It's an apartheid state. It is an oppressive regime. It's an evil place. Okay. And let's look at the, okay, let's say it is. But at the same point, as evil as quote unquote as Israel is, look at all the other nations that have come and gone at the time of Israel, Israel doing these oppressive things. Look at the oppressive regime in North Korea. Look at the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot in Cambodia. Look at Saddam Hussein's Iraq. Look at the current situation in Syria. Why are they not receiving the same type of scrutiny, the same type of condemnation as Israel? Why is Israel receiving so much extra condemnation? The world seems to be obsessed with Israel, obsessed with the Jewish people. I mean, look at these numbers. It's unbelievable. Look at the disproportionate amount of focus and attention there is on Israel. Bottom line is, for whatever reason, a lot of people look at this, and it's true. There's probably some anti-Semitism in there. There probably also may be various geopolitical reasons as to why the UN is structured the way it is. Okay, whatever. It's not really important. The bottom line is that a lot of people get bent out of shape and upset at this. I like to look at it in the positive light. I like to look at it like this. The fact that the world is obsessed with the Jews is because it says from Zion is going to come the Torah. The world is, of course, obsessed with Jews. They're looking at us. They're looking at us. They're obsessed with us. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so, okay, between the news and the dominance of Jewish idea on the spiritual realm, the fact that our ideas are considered self-evident, that's the next thing. It seems that it's worked. We still have a long way to go, but much of the tenets of ethical monotheism are today held to be self-evident. Like I said 2,000 years ago, don't worry about it, Kristen. Like I said 2,000 years ago, thank you, Josiane. 2,000 years ago, we were killing babies, and we were killing babies, and we were eating our enemies, and we were conquering for the sake of conquering, and we lived in a world at war. And today, these ideas of ethical monotheism are held as self-evident. These ideas of universal education, of the privacy of family, social responsibility, peace, justice and equality, respect for human life. It's unbelievable. Look at the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. It's not that they're trying to prove it to you. They're trying to demonstrate the validity and importance of these ideas. It's self-evident that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by the Creator with a certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's unbelievable. Anyways, that's the Jewish idea. In other words, by being the chosen people, by living these ideas, by living these ideas and allowing these ideas to be manifest in the world, by living the change we hope to see, the world seems to be catching on. Even though we, the Jewish people, are this beaten, broken people, oftentimes not really in control, not having any power, being marginalized and stuck in ghettos and kept to the side. And yet the world seems to be obsessed with us, and the world seems to be learning from us. Over the last 2,000 years, our ideas seem to be becoming dominant. And it's true. There are ideas of, I'm not going to read this long comment, David, but yes. Okay. The final thing I want to say is this idea of tikkun olam. All right? The idea of tikkun olam works hand in hand with the idea of chosen people. The problem is, a lot of people, I think, have a misunderstanding of what tikkun olam means. Tikkun olam doesn't mean what you think it means. Okay? The source from tikkun olam comes from a prayer that religious Jews say 3 times a day. It's called the Aleinu prayer. It's the second paragraph of the Aleinu prayer. Even if you're not a religious Jew, if you've been to a synagogue on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, we say it there. So you've probably heard the Aleinu prayer before. Paragraph number 1 talks about God's greatness and how it's so great to be alive and living in God's world, and it's fantastic. Okay, that's part 1. Part 2 then says like this: therefore, it's our hope. We put our hope in you, God, that we will soon see your Tiferes Uzacha. I have to define what that means. To remove the Gilulim from the earth, that the little gods will be completely cut off, and that you'll fix the world, which Tikkun Olam, be Mesaken Olam b'Malchus Shakai, with the kingship of this particular name of God, Shakai. Okay? So what does that mean? So our hope is that we're going to see your Tiferes Uzacha. That literally means like the beauty of your strength, but what it basically means is that we're going to see your ways. We're going to understand. Our hope is that ultimately there will come a time where we as the Jewish people, or we as the world, is that we will understand why God does what he does. You know, why anything good always comes, any light always comes from darkness. You want to have a baby, it has to come from the pain and the terror of labor. You know, you want to achieve something good, you have to take risks. You have to do something scary, you know? Jewish history is filled with so much horror that hopefully is going to be manifest in something good. Okay, so our hope is that at some point we're going to see God's strength. We're going to understand his ways. Number two is that God's going to remove the Gilulim from the world. What are the Gilulim? The Gilulim is from the word galal, which means, anybody know what galal means? Galal means manure. Manure. God's going to get rid of the animal waste. In other words, God's going to remove all the BS from the world, all the garbage, the nonsense, the insanity, the stupidity, the rationalizations, the justifications, the garbage, our insecurities, gone. All the BS, gone. And then finally, God's got to cut off the little gods. What are the little gods? So the word little gods in Hebrew is alil. The word for God is kale. Ale is the real way of saying it. Alil, when you add a little double at the end, that means little gods. What's a little god? So the Jewish people are, it says to somewhere else, I think it's the book of Jeremiah, or in book of Psalms rather, can't remember, I think it's the book of Psalms. We have to beware and fight the little gods within ourselves. What's the little god in you? Ego. Ego. In religious term, Yetzer Hara. Ego. When the ego is cut off, at that point, now God can fix the world. And specifically, he'll fix the world with that name of God, Shaddai. If you look at every mezuzah, it has that name of God, Shah, and then Die. Shah, God said, die, enough. God could have created a world that was infinite. You could stick at your hand and never see it again. But he decided not to. He created a world that's limited. It's a three-dimensional world, that's limited by time. God made a world that's man-sized, human-sized, that we can fit in and we can do our work. Ultimately, our hope is that God will fix this world. You know, how? Through us taking personal responsibility for ourselves and for our lives, taking responsibility to live this mission, to be the change we want to see in the world. And by living this way, ultimately, we'll get this clarity. We'll understand the beauty of God. We'll understand God's ways. All the BS will be gone. Our ego will be cut off. And finally, God will fix the world. But who fixed the world? Not you, not me, God. That's the concept Tikkun Olam. So, you know, the point is like this, like I've said, don't push the Torah's agenda. Live the Torah's agenda. Live the Torah's agenda. Be the change you want to be. Affect the change you want to change the world by living consistently with these principles. Don't talk a good game. Live a good game. Easier said than done. I can tell you from experience, but that's the bottom line. We want to live our principles. And by living our principles, we see the world is exactly because the world is obsessed. That world's obsessed with the Jewish people. We've got a long way to go. And we have a lot of problems in our community. And we have problems in all our communities, in our religious communities, our secular communities, our religious secular communities getting along with each other. I mean, we've got lots of problems. But if we're able to start taking responsibility and accepting other people and accepting, you know, living with these realities, we'll be able to achieve these goals. You know, I'll just give you examples, some laws that we can keep, you know, everything, whether it's giving what's called Meiser, 10% of your income to helping those in need or to causes you believe in, working towards universal education, taking responsibilities for people who can't help themselves, loving converts, judging other people favorably, not talking smack. There's a million things we can do to push the Torah's agenda by living the Torah's agenda. That's the bottom line. Okay. So what's the conclusion? The world is watching. If you're Jewish, the world thinks you're chosen. Great. So be responsible and fix the world. You don't fix the world by abandoning the tools that Judaism put at your disposal. You embrace them by living with these things. I would say world peace would come by living these ways. If you're not judging other people and insecure about other people, but you feel approved, you feel validated. And so you're going beyond, you're not competing with other people. You're helping, you're celebrating other people's success as opposed to trying to talk smack and put them down so you can fill your void with your own success. That's how you create peace. That's how you get rid of the insecurities. That's how, you know, can we solve the international geopolitical problems? Maybe, but we can, I don't know, maybe not. but we certainly can solve all the conflict and problems that happen in our own world by learning to, not 100%, but maybe by learning, we can certainly go a long way towards judging other people favorably, giving people the benefit of the doubt, not talking garbage about other people, going out of our ways to help other people, to embrace and celebrate other people's success, to not see ourselves as deficient because somebody else is doing good. These are powerful, powerful things. If we're able to live with these concepts, we'll be able to put these things into play. Next thing, every group claims to be chosen. Like we said, only Judaism is claiming that chosenness means that the world will watch and take notice. And the world is watching. So bottom line, that's what it means to be the chosen people. Because when the world is running down, you get the best of what's still around. All right, good? Everybody with us? Perfect timing. Let's take a 2-second break. Our guest speaker is here. And I'll introduce him in just a second. And then we'll party like it's 1999. This slide here, Zoe. When the world is running down, the best of what's still around. You were born in 1999, Nina? 2000 party, oh, out of time. You know, I'll tell you something, Jennifer. I don't really know so much about Banksy, but I just like the picture. I don't really know his politics. I have a feeling me and Banksy might not agree, but okay, you know. So follow my Instagram, Jewish Marissa. Everybody follow Jewish Marissa. And since we're hyping our Instagram pages, follow the real Svi. And why not, man? Sometimes I follow back, you know. Nima, I'm going to look at that in a second. All right. I didn't follow you back, Nima? Oh. Okay. I'll flip through my Instagram when we get off the class. All right, let me unshare my screen. Everybody take a 2-second break. Take 2 minutes, and then we'll introduce our guest speaker, and we will get started. Party? Cool. Woo! When the world is running down, get the best of what's still around. When the world is running down, you get the best of what's still around. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll come to YU. Bring me down. All righty. Anyways, let me introduce our guest speaker. Everybody ready? Party people in the house, say ho. Ho! All right. So when you apply to the program, I got a whole paragraph to read here. When you applied to the program, many of you were interviewed by someone named Michael. Anybody there interviewed by Michael? People interviewed by Michael? Even if you weren't interviewed by Michael, the vast majority of you found out about this program via social media, a social media campaign that was spearheaded by Michael and his teams. What you may not know is that in his humility, Michael probably never told you that he's actually a rabbi. And not only is he a rabbi, but he runs the website rabbiwithanswers.com. Rabbieswithanswers.com. Hang on. Rabbieswithanswers.com. And there you go. And which attracts tens of thousands of visitors, and he's a highly sought-after speaker. He has been flown around the world, having spoken on hundreds of university campuses across 6 continents. And now, for the first time ever, speaking virtually on the Olami Inspire online platform, speaking on the topic of crazy cases in Jewish monetary laws. I'm honored to introduce Rabbi Tully Michael Bricks. Woo! Guys, put your hands together, people. Put your hands together. Woot, give us some woots. I didn't share his website with publicly. Here we go. There you go. Look. Woo! All righty. All right, so Rabbi, you ready? Is your mic on? I can't hear you. You didn't turn on your microphone.
Now I'm ready.
Whoa, there you go. All right, I'm going to turn off mine so I won't be a distraction. But if you guys need me, I'm here. I am here. You're 6'4". You don't need guns to defend your doggy. All right, everybody, give it up. There we go. Oh, I wanted to say, by the way, this class is interactive, so you need to be on your game and answering questions in the chat. You down? Everybody ready? Hello? You ready? Yes, okay, good. Ivy is with us. All right, here we go. All yours, Rabbi.
Thank you so much, Zvi. It's such an honor to be here. I want to apologize up front because I really have never, ever, ever done this virtually before. Yeah, so it's Tully Michael. So it's two names. The Michael you got right, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Tully in front, T-U-L-L-Y, and then you could always add the Rabbi and everything else. Anyway, a brief introduction. Growing up, I was someone who had many questions about my Judaism and where I fit into it all. And I remember being invited once to join some sort of Jewish retreat. And I was like, I don't really want to go. But they were like, well, it's a 3-to-1 girl-to-guy ratio. I was like, all right, I guess you put it that way. I'll give it a try. He twisted my arm. And it really was fantastic. But I had some questions. So as long as I'm here, I'll ask these rabbis my questions, put them in their place. And I was really shocked to see there really were meaningful answers. So little by little, I started to learn more, started to grow more. I ended up doing a gap year in Israel. And as I went through university, I started to attend some classes in yeshiva. And I eventually became so in love with Judaism, so passionate about Judaism. I thought perhaps now I have a responsibility to share with others. So now I have this website answering questions to students around the world, and I travel all over as well. And now I'm finally trying out this whole virtual thing, which is really very exciting as well. So, when Zvi and I spoke about possible topics, this is the one that he suggested. Basically, it's crazy cases in Jewish courts. I don't know how many of you are familiar. There actually is a Jewish court system, a Jewish justice system. Just like perhaps in the secular world, you could have a lawsuit, you could have a judgment. So you have a similar thing in the Jewish world, but a little bit different. In the secular world, if two people are arguing over or have a monetary dispute, and let's say David and Michael, and they're arguing, if you don't know anything about the case, you don't know any of the details, any idea who would win, David versus Michael? So I see David. Okay, I've got I'd win. Nice. Not at all. No. There we go. Who's that? Who's that? Lotan Jackson. Person with the more money. Bang. 100%. I could 99% of the time, that is the one. I like the Jewish lawyer comment. Excellent. But basically, the best lawyer, which might be the Jewish lawyer, the one with the most money, more often than not, they are the ones who win the case. In other words, it has nothing to do with right and wrong. It's more about who has the most money, who has the best lawyer, and who wins. In Judaism, we at least try to approach it differently. We believe that it works differently. And the real goal on both sides of the argument is to get to the truth. And therefore, if you come to me and say, I owe you $100, and I don't know that I owe you $100, I don't think that I owe you $100, so then we both want to go to a Jewish court, because if I really have $100 that belongs to you, I don't want stolen money in my possession, and I want to give it to you. But if I don't really owe you that money, and that's really my money that God enabled me to have, then I know I'm supposed to keep it and I'm supposed to use it. So therefore, we both go to the Jewish court with an open mind and we both walk away, hopefully, with full confidence in the verdict, regardless of whether it was in my favor or the other person's favor. So that's really the humility in which we try to approach cases within a Jewish court. And what I'd like to do now is sort of share some real crazy cases that actually went to Jewish courts. And what will make this a little bit different and perhaps more exciting is I'm going to empower you guys to be the judges. Imagine you're sitting in the courtroom and you have the opportunity to choose who is right and who is wrong, or how to make a settlement that will work for everyone. And again, you'll just put in the comments what you think is right, but I'll ask a few things about your comments. Number one, to back yourself up. Don't just say David wins or Michael wins, but try to very briefly explain yourself. Briefly, let's say 10 words or less, since it's hard for me to talk and read at the same time. And the second thing is, obviously, you could disagree and have a right to disagree and argue your case against others who have different opinions, but to please do so respectfully and not to put other people down in the process. All right. So the first case we're going to try, let's take a look at my notes here. All right, this is a crazy story. Wow, I'm just looking at it now. Unbelievable story. Pepsi was having a campaign to give out a free car. A free car. You know the promotions they have on the containers. This is a free car. You look under the bottle cap. If it says car, you won a free car. And there was a guy who was hosting a wedding for his daughter. His daughter got married, was getting married, and he bought lots and lots and lots of bottles of soda, of Pepsi soda. He was not actually aware of the car campaign at the time. So anyway, he buys, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bottles of Pepsi, orders actually through a caterer. The caterer puts them all out on the table, and the guests come. And the guests are having a great time at the party, and they're singing, and they're dancing, and they're eating and drinking. And all of a sudden, one of the guests opens up a bottle of Pepsi on his table, looks inside the cap, and goes, "I won! I won! This is great! I won!" He starts jumping up and down. He's doing a whole new dance for himself. People at his table start dancing with him. Wow, that's so exciting. You won. It's a new car. I really could use a new car. This is wonderful news. And at the end of the wedding, he comes over to the host and says, "Thank you so much. This beautiful wedding. It was so nice. And I had such a good time. And I won a car. Isn't that great? I won a car." The host says, "What do you mean you won a car?" He says, "Well, I opened the Pepsi bottle, and look at that, the new promotion. I won a free car." So the host says, "Listen, I'm so happy you had a good time. But you didn't win a new car. I won a new car. Who do you think paid for all of these Pepsi containers? It was me. That prize goes to me." And the guy says, no. You offered it to us to drink. I see. So a hard case there. You're right. Because this is. I opened up. It's my drink. It's my prize. And then the caterer who overhears the conversation says, "Wait a minute, guys. Who do you think went out and physically bought the soda bottles and put them on the table? Who do you think is going to collect them afterwards? That's me, the caterer. I'm the one that keeps it. You empowered me to buy the supplies. I'm the one that actually physically chose the drinks, picked them up. It was my mazel, my luck that enabled it to happen." And the three of them are having a debate. And of course, they now go to a Jewish court to try and get the truth. And here we are. And now we are ready for your judgments. Let's see what we got here. All right. Sarah says it's the guest. It depends. Shane, it belongs to the dad because his money is what enabled it. Joseph, the drink was intended as a gift. Therefore, the one who bought it from the caterer is the owner. Definitely not the caterer. Wow, you guys are fast. All right, the guest. It should be who actually paid for the soda. The caterer, because, probably keeps it. I think the gift should, wow. The guest, whoever needs it more. I like that, Haley. Once you buy something for a guest, it belongs to him. Okay. Belongs to the host, I think, but depends on the conditions of giving the drink. Okay, guest. Split it 3 ways. Nice, Isaac. The guest, that's wrong for either of them, others to claim it. Okay. Hannah, the dad, because he purchased it. The funds were transferred to the caterer. Cody, depends. Was this in California? I'm not actually sure where it was. Sell the car, split the profit. Should we donate to charity so no one gets it with that one? Would be the guest ever bring the bottle home? Would the guest have been able to bring the bottle home? Good question. Would that have been a reasonable thing to do? Karen, that's an excellent, excellent question and may be relevant for our case. So Robert says the guest possessed the drink. It's his. Oh, Sarah, nice one. Bride and groom, make it a wedding gift. Max guy brought the drink. Morgan, the host, was unaware of the whole contest, so I say the guest. If he never told the host, this wouldn't have happened. Interesting, Morgan. Very interesting. Ivy, rightfully belongs to the individual who purchased the drink. Although it was a gift, it was his money that they were able to purchase. Okay, nice argument there. I'm not sure this name here. It's something Vega or Vega. If it was in Venezuela, everyone gets in on it. Okay, Drew, I agree with the idea of being brought as a gift unless belonging to whoever opened the drink. The caterer and the dad would never have found the cap not for the guest. Okay, finders keepers, unless it's actual money. Sarah, interesting. That's Sarah Ramos. There's another plain Sarah here. What if they get to throw out the bottle? Nice. I shouldn't read that, Josian. Let's see. The one who was gifted the drink. It's not read. Okay, excellent points here. All right, so there's a few. You're all making great, great, great points, and they're all part of this discussion and part of the process. One point that many of you made is, on the one hand, the guy that bought it, it should be his. He owns it. On the other hand, it was given to the guest. Perhaps the guest gets to keep it. But is the guest allowed to bring sodas home? Can a guest walk around and pick up 20 soda bottles and walk home with them? Probably not. And then what about the caterer? Normally after an affair, the caterer is the one that collects all of the opened bottles and usually keeps them himself. Perhaps yes, perhaps no. Interestingly, when we made a bar mitzvah for my son, it was in the contract with the caterer that any open bottles we keep and any closed bottles the caterer keeps. So in this particular case, at least in terms of the dispute between the host, the father, and the caterer, since the bottle was opened, it would seem the host would have precedence. And to the question of whether it's permissible to walk home with the bottles, probably not. Right? It's gifted to you to drink from the bottle, but not to take, let's say the 5-cent refund for the bottles, bringing them to get them recycled. That's certainly not something guests are allowed to walk around and collect 100 bottles. That's really the host or the caterer that would get that opportunity. In this case, in my case, the host, because of the agreement in the contract. But one of you at least made a very interesting point that was relevant here, and that is, but I'm not looking at the side thing anymore, just so you know, since we're moving on to the next case shortly. One of you made the point that is since the host and the caterer were not aware of the contest. So even though the guests have no right to the bottles or the bottle caps, let's say the 5-cent refund, that belongs to the host or the caterer. But since they were not aware of the contest or the prize, in Judaism, one is not able to acquire something they are not aware of. You cannot just like accidentally make an acquisition. You must have intent to acquire something. And therefore, when the father purchased the soda or the caterer purchased it for him, he purchased and acquired the soda, the drink. He purchased and acquired the bottle, the 5-cent refund opportunity with the cap, as well as anything else, but not the prize, because he was not aware of that prize. And therefore, the prize essentially is considered ownerless. The caps that enable one to win a prize are considered ownerless, and when it comes to something ownerless, the first person that picks up something ownerless, he acquires it. And therefore, the guest would be the one to keep, as Jewish court ruled, would keep the prize. However, he must refund the 5-cent benefit for recycling back to the father, back to the host. So anyway, well done, all of you. Amazing, amazing points. And hopefully, the guest was never invited to anything ever again. Great point there, Sarah. Hopefully they'll make peace. And the truth is, look, even when there's a ruling in a Jewish court, and hopefully everyone approaches it with appreciation that the truth was reached, you're not obligated to keep your winnings. I mean, the guest could have, after he was given it, entitled to keep the winnings, he could have sold the car and split it 3 ways, or he could have got the car and given it as a gift to the bride and groom. Meaning, the guest could have done a beautiful thing afterwards, and maybe he did, and he could still be invited to future weddings in that case. But at least in terms of the legality of it, he's the one who's entitled to the prize. All right, next case. 5 guys. I don't know how many of you have been to yeshiva or heard of yeshiva, but you learn a lot about life in yeshiva and really how to succeed in life. There are actually a number of people that have gone to yeshiva and went straight to Ivy League law schools from yeshiva without having any formal university study because of the depth in which Talmudic analysis is done in a yeshiva setting. So there were 5 guys in the yeshiva, and they were in Israel studying Judaism. And then it was time for Passover vacation, and they were ready to head to the airport. However, most taxis only hold, what's that? Here in Boston, 8 new yeshiva guys to Harvard Law every year. Very good. Okay, good to hear it, Tzvi. So there were 5 yeshiva guys. They want to take a taxi to the airport. The problem is most taxis in Israel, or around the world probably, only fit 4 guys. So they said, we don't want to pay for a second taxi just for 1 guy. Right? Let's say each taxi cost, let's say 300 shekel. So it's 300 shekel for a taxi, which means if you're going to have to pay for 2 taxis, that's going to be 600 shekel. Wouldn't it be better if we could all fit into 1 taxi? And though they're not all super fat, there are girls' versions of the yeshiva, Drew. So they're called seminaries, so don't worry if you want to, I don't know if you're a girl or a guy, but if any girls want to join, they have that opportunity. So the guys are thinking and planning, what should we do? And they realized, wait a minute. One of our, you are Drew, okay, you are a girl, great. So what should we do? Oh, one of the guys, there are co-ed learning opportunities as well, Sarah. But I'll add, most of them are single gender because one tends to often gets distracted in a co-ed setting. But there are co-ed opportunities for those that want it. So anyway, one of the guys was actually very small. You know what? Why don't we put him in a suitcase? So they put the guy into an empty suitcase, and they all load into the taxi. 4 guys getting in. They put the suitcase into the trunk with their friends, and a couple. Yeah, the story is crazy. I told you, the title is accurate. Crazy cases. These are all crazy cases. So they get into the taxi, and the taxi starts driving, and the guys are thrilled. They're so proud of themselves. And they happen to be guys from France. So they start speaking in French about this amazing trick that they pulled on the taxi driver, because the driver actually owned the company. So it was him, and he would have had a second car to come. He only had to bring 1 car. So they're cracking up and talking about, wow, we tricked the driver. We saved ourselves 300 shekel. This is great. Now the driver happened to understand French. But he doesn't say anything. Instead, he continues to drive to the airport. He gets to the airport. The yeshiva guys get out of the car. They're about to open the trunk, and the driver zooms out. He leaves the airport. He drives to an undisclosed location in the middle of nowhere, opens up the trunk, opens up the suitcase in the trunk, introduces himself to the 5th yeshiva bacher, and he says, look, you've got 2 choices right now. Option 1 is I leave you right here in the middle of nowhere. You're going to miss your flight. Option 2 is you pay me 1,500 shekel, 1,500 shekel, because that's the fine I would have been given by the police had I been caught with you in the trunk, and then I'll take you back to the airport, join your friends. So without much of a choice, the boy gives him 1,500 shekel. The driver takes him to the airport. They go back home, and they come back after Passover, and they bring the taxi driver to Beis Din, to the Jewish court. So the boys are claiming, you owe us 1,500 shekels back. The driver counterclaims, not only do I not owe you the 1,500 shekel, you owe me an additional 300 shekel for the second taxi that you were supposed to order. So the question for you guys now, who gets the money? Does the 1,500 shekels stay with the driver, go back to the boys? What about the extra 300 shekel for the second taxi? Does that go to the driver, or does that stay with the boys? And yes, we got a mess here. So I see a couple of people saying the driver, but you got to defend yourselves, and you got to explain what goes to the driver. So let's see. The driver's is valid. The boys knowingly broke the policy. Okay. Counterclaim. So they should pay 300 shekel. I think 1,500 covers 300 the boys owed. Okay. In the middle, I'm on the fence, Sarah. Okay. Drivers owe nothing because he was an accomplice to the crime. And the guy should pay the fine because they broke the law. Okay, but there was no fine, meaning there would have been a fine had he been caught. But in this case, there was no fine because he wasn't caught. Driver didn't get a fine, right? Excellent point there, Joshua. Keep 1,500. He chose to keep driving when you're excellent. Was driver guilty of kidnapping? Good question. Driver wasn't caught. So right. Okay, you all made that point. Great. So 1,500. Sarah Lindsay says 1,500 back to the boys, but they do owe the driver 300. Okay. All right, Sarah Amos says split it. Just so now it's a fine. Will only be a fine if the police get involved. There's no police involved right now. This is in the Jewish court. So the Jewish courts nowadays don't deal with capital offenses. They only deal with monetary disputes. They don't have the power to deal with capital offenses. Try to get 1,500 and the 300. Wow, Hannah. They all colluded. All right. Boys get 1,200. So that's Sarah also saying basically 1,500 goes back and 300 goes back to the driver. You have to keep driving around with the guy in the trunk. Excellent. I've got a lot of people here are saying the 1,500, 300 thing. The 1,500 was stolen essentially. Give that back to the boys. The driver knew about that, but the boys still owe 300 for the second taxi. All right. Ivy says driver is right here. He was not only broke the policy, but they did it with full intention. Well, driver's not fine. He was sniffing at risk, and they stole driver money due to the second cab. Okay. Extortion from Cody. All right. Karen thinks they don't even know the 300. Okay. And Cody, 300 should be paid to the driver. Okay. Miriam, 1,500 is not right. Maddie agrees with Shira. I don't know what Shira said, but Maddie agrees with her. So try basically kidnap somebody. Okay, Morgan, 1,200 shekel back to the guys, and they ended up with 2 taxis. Right. Okay. So sounds like the majority opinion here is 1,500 gets returned to the boys, but they still have to pay an additional 300 for the second taxi. So Karen asks, why should the driver pay the 300? They could have used a different cab company. They could have, but this was like the cab company from the area. So if they would have used the second one, he's the company they would have used. Anyway, I want to share with you guys now the brilliance of the Jewish court in this case. So first of all, the no-brainer is that most of you said, and that is that the 1,500 goes back. That part's not such a big, crazy idea. He wasn't fined. Had he been fined, it would be a different story. But since he was not fined, and since he knowingly took them, even after he heard them, that they had him in the trunk, and he nevertheless drove all the way to the airport, so he can't keep the 1,500. That goes back to the boys. But in terms of the 300 for the second cab, did the fifth boy really get a second cab? The fifth boy actually got a car ride in a trunk. So what the Jewish court did was they did a survey of 100 yeshiva guys and asked them, how much would you pay for a car ride to the airport in a trunk? The regular rate to sit in a car in a taxi would be 300 shekel. What sort of discount would you need to motivate you to go in the trunk instead of sitting comfortably in the car? Interestingly, the typical yeshiva guy said 50% off. Oh yeah, Nina, excellent, 50%. Typical, the survey was 50% off would be enough of a motivation for me to go in the trunk. And therefore, the ruling was, the Jewish court, that they don't owe 300 shekels for the second taxi, they owe 150 shekels, because that's the value that they received. And therefore, he gives back 1,500 shekels to the boys, and they pay 150 shekel to the taxi driver. Now, had it been yeshiva girls or seminary girls, I imagine the answer to that survey would have been a much bigger discount. And Sarah, yes, this is law based on the Torah, correct. And sometimes the Torah values how humans think. Sometimes, there are many laws like that where we value how people think. For example, for prayers, a person is supposed to dress up in a respectful manner. But how do you define respect? In one community, wearing a suit and tie would be the way to show respect. On a kibbutz in Israel, it might be a nice pair of shorts. So therefore, the proper way to pray may change based on your culture, based on your society, and based on the societal norms in your particular area. But the bottom line is the Torah has an answer for everything, and in this case, we got to see how to sort of approach the delicate balance. All right, we're going to move to the third case here. All right. To introduce this third case, I'm going to give you a little background information. You may have already learned it a little bit, but just in case not everyone is familiar, when it comes to Jewish dating or traditional Jewish dating, there's a concept called a shidduch, which is essentially where a matchmaker, where someone sets you up on a date. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about this. Fiddler on the Roof is not the place to go to get your information. It's not like necessarily some old lady sitting in who doesn't know you and doesn't know the potential partner and just says, oh, you sound like good, you should go get married, and you never meet each other, and then you show up at the wedding and there you are. It's really more like a blind date. And you can have a friend who knows you well and knows a potential mate well and says, you know what, you guys, based on what you're looking for, it seems like you'd be a good match. And you could ask questions to your friend to get more information. And some people today will even do some Facebook stalking in the process. And you do your best to try to understand if this is a good match or not. And if it looks good on both sides, then you agree to go out. And yes, you do meet each other, you get to know each other, and you see if in fact you're attracted to one another. And so that's the concept of a shidduch, of a match. And there's a professional, people could do it as a volunteer, but there are people that do it as a profession, professional matchmakers. And that is the service they provide. And there is a fee that's paid, just like for a realtor will get paid a fee for setting up a buyer and seller on a real estate property. So same thing with a matchmaker. Nina, you need a matchmaker? I'm not sure if that's what you're asking for, but I'm sure Tzvi can okay, I'm sure Tzvi can help you out with that. A matchmaker, you could imagine, if they do a good job, are entitled to a nice sum. So, for example, in many communities, a typical matchmaking fee might be $1,500, $1,500. And the question is, though, what if there's more than one matchmaker in the process? For example, what if one person set up the couple and then someone else helped the dating process along? Svi's on vacation. So if that happens, then the first matchmaker is entitled to $500. He gets 1/3. And the second matchmaker helped the process along. He gets $1,000. He gets 2/3 for the more difficult job of dealing with all the back and forth and the challenges along the way. Great. Okay, you guys don't have to put your resumes here on the chat, in terms of, blonde hair, blue eyes, what you're looking for. That can be done privately with Tzvi after the discussion. But Heather did turn 23, guys, in case you're wondering. So here's what happens. We add this guy. We'll call him David. Got another David. And David is looking for a girl. And his friend Michael says, oh, David, I've got a great girl for you. And he describes her, and she really sounds great. And David's interested. And Michael tells the girl about David, and she said, oh, that sounds great to me. They're both interested. So Michael said, but just, David, I'm very excited for you guys, but I don't have time to be the matchmaker. If you guys start dating seriously, I don't have time to be involved. So I'm happy just to take my 1/3 commission, and then feel free to find someone else to help you guys along. So they go on their first date, and sure enough, it was a big hit, big success. They liked each other, and they want to continue dating. And now David's thinking, who should I get to be the new matchmaker to help this process along? Because there really are complications that sometimes come out during dating. And there are difficult discussions that have to take place and negotiating with the couple and with the parents. I mean, things get complicated with relatives. And he's thinking, I need someone who's really good and savvy and a good negotiator. And he thinks, I know just the person. Me! David thinks he could do it. He's also, not only is he good at negotiations, he's also great at disguising his voice. So he thinks, Karen doesn't like this plan. So he thinks, look, I'll just speak to her after each date, make sure everything is okay, and deal with any issues that come up, speak to her parents, and that's his plan. So they go out on the next date, and again, things seem to go well. David disguises his voice, calls her up afterwards, calls her parents afterwards, and starts, addressing the issues that came up during the dating, and he does a great job. He really works hard, and he's addressing all of the concerns that come up, and several weeks later, they get engaged. And everyone's so excited, and they get to the engagement party, and Karen, that's very funny. They get to the engagement party. I said several weeks, Sarah, but if you're dating in this kind of format, where you're skipping the whole club scene, you're skipping the whole, flirting scene, the whole romance scene, all the parts with, that kind of stuff, and you're both dating for the purpose of marriage, and right away you've already researched each other beforehand, and from the first date, you're already talking about things like how many kids you want and all that kind of stuff. It is definitely possible for it to happen much more quickly and effectively. So anyway, they're at the engagement party, and everyone's excited, and the girl's parents come to Michael, the guy that set them up, and they say, thank you so much for setting them up. Here's $500. We want to thank you for this beautiful match. And then the father goes over to David, the chassan, the groom, and says, David, first of all, welcome to the family. Secondly, I never got to meet the other matchmaker, the other shadchan. He was so nice. He was so helpful. He was so, productive. Here's $1,000. Please give it to him with my thanks. And just said, oh no, and oh man from Sarah. After the engagement party, David runs to the Jewish court. And he says, what do I do? Because on the one hand, as Karen says, I did do all the work. David really did work hard. Maybe he's entitled to that $1,000. On the other hand, Shimon's the one that's, his friend Michael's the one that set him up. Maybe Michael should keep the whole $1,500. Just send it to Michael. Or maybe he should go back to the father, as Graham is saying, fraud and deception here, and say, Dad, I hope you'll still consider me for your daughter, but here's $1,000 back. It was me the whole time. I'm not entitled to it. So we got three options, at least potentially, maybe more. Three options here. Option one, David keeps the money because he really did do the hard work and he really did the job and he was successful. They got engaged. Option two, it goes to Michael, the original matchmaker, say, hey, you keep it, and let's keep it between us. And option three, give it back to the father and hope for the best. All right, so Shana says, go back to the father. You don't get paid for work on your relationship. It should go back to the father. Okay, it should go back to the father. Okay, several times there, Shana. Got the point? Graham, marriage should not be built on lies. Ooh, sounds like Graham is already trying to put his credentials out there for his own dating here. Sadie, I think she should break off the engagement. It's a red flag. All right. Moses, tell the father the truth and let him decide. Sarah, but it's kind of weird. The husband talked to everybody confidentially while also being a part of the conversation. Lauren, they should discuss it as a group. No lies. Sarah says father. Goldie Baum, why doesn't he just tell him? He might be worried that it will ruin the engagement. I agree as a husband, a father. Yeah, I agree and go back to the father. Yeah, the lies are saying the wrong way. Lauren adds, everyone's consenting adults and should all participate in the process. All right. There are Dementius. There are Jewish Asian girls also. So if you specifically want an Asian girl, you could still find a Jewish one. Judaism is not a race. You have Jews from all different areas around the world. Not to worry. We could find someone for you, I'm sure. Let's see. A relationship is ruined without truth communication. What did the Rebbitzin say? Have her convert, as long as she really wants to be Jewish, that's fine. And Josine, I guess you're laughing over there. So yeah, Israel's might be an issue. Israel's in the Middle East. It's sort of on the border of a bunch of them. Okay, so it sounds like the majority of the group here really wants him to tell the father. Karen jumped in. I think he should keep it. Okay, so no one has anticipated the ruling here. Father wants to go. Oh, Karen, very good. Okay, I like that. All right. No one has anticipated the actual ruling here. In this case, here's what happens. Most of you pointed out, or many of you pointed out, that you cannot be your own third-party objective agent if you're one of the people involved. You cannot be your own matchmaker. Or at least you can't be a third-party objective paid matchmaker, because if you're dating, of course you're supposed to try to make it work. That's what anyone dating is going to do, hopefully. So you're not entitled to be paid for that as an objective third party. So therefore, despite the fact that he worked hard, he's not considered a matchmaker. It's as if there was no matchmaker helping them along the way. The only matchmaker who was involved in the process at all was his friend Michael, who started the whole thing. The rule is, if there's only one matchmaker, even if he does nothing except set you up and does nothing else beyond that, that matchmaker is entitled to the entire matchmaking fee. And therefore, Michael gets the full $1,500. So David gives Michael the $1,500. In terms of telling the father, my guess is on the 10-year wedding anniversary, David sits down with his wife and says, boy, do I have a story to tell you. And hopefully by that point, the love is strong enough, the relationship is strong enough that hopefully it's not going to ruin things. You're all correct that honesty is a very big policy in Judaism. But at the same time, if marriage is considered a very big deal, and if people are ready to get married, and if the judges considered that David to otherwise be an upstanding, good, honest, moral guy, except for this misstep, then sharing that information or forcing him to share that information now would likely ruin the relationship. And even if really they're meant to be together, and even if really they love each other and want to be together. So in this particular case, the ruling was that he was not obligated to tell them. And like I said, probably at a later point, he did say so. Interestingly, when it comes to dating and what do you share and what do you not share, there are a lot of laws about that. You're not always required to share every single bit of your private, embarrassing information with a potential spouse, at least not necessarily up front. For example, if someone is a convert to Judaism, if someone has an illness, these are things that do have to be shared, but maybe not on the first date. They could be shared perhaps in the third or fourth date at a later point, so people don't misjudge you at the outset before you have a chance to meet them. So there is some sensitivity to privacy and some sensitivity as to the need to share information, but perhaps not always right away. All right, next case. A locksmith gets a phone call. He gets a phone call from a woman who says, oh, please come right away. We're trapped out of our house. It's pouring outside. Please come with my children. Please come as fast as you can. The locksmith drops what he's doing. He runs over to the house, and sure enough, there's a woman there with 3 kids, and it's pouring on them. They don't even have an umbrella. They don't have coats on. And as fast as he can, he gets the door open, helps them inside. He says, you know what, don't even pay me now. I see you're drenched. Here's my business card. Call me when you have a chance. And so we could, take care of the compensation. She thanks him so much. He leaves and gets back to his home and goes back to what he was doing. About a week later, the locksmith gets a phone call. And the man on the phone says, are you locksmith so-and-so? He says, yes, that's me. Oh, did you help open a door at this address? Says, yes, I came. You live there. Oh, your wife was trapped outside with the kids in the rain. I opened the door for them. I'm so happy it worked out. And when you get a chance, make the payment, the compensation. So the owner of the house says, compensate you? You need to compensate me. I'm not married. I'm a diamond dealer, and I had about $10,000 worth of diamonds in my home, my locked home. And thanks to you, it was no longer locked, and the $10,000 worth of diamonds was stolen, unrecoverable, and she is gone, and we have no way of getting it back. So you need to pay me the $10,000. And the locksmith says, I'm so sorry that happened, but how could have I known that? She really seemed like, an innocent person. She's out in the rain, the poor kids. I helped for it. And in terms of Moises' point about the insurance, you might be right, but the question is, whose insurance? Is it going to be the homeowner's insurance or the locksmith's insurance? Someone's rate's going to go up afterwards, and the question is, who is going to take the loss? Here's a case where you have two essentially innocent parties, right? The locksmith acted in good faith, innocently. The homeowner also had done his due diligence, locking the door. Neither one did anything necessarily wrong, but the Jewish court now has to decide who keeps the money or who takes the loss, and hence insurance company has to deal with it. So Moises says the homeowner's insurance has to pay for it. Shana says, hey, you didn't really keep it in such a safe place. It could be the home was locked very well. Sarah, should be systems in place to prevent this? Good question. All right. Graham, the homeowner should be kept. Oh, sorry, it's going too fast for me. Locksmith is responsible. He should have confirmed. Was irresponsible, he probably meant to say. Should have confirmed whose home was. That's Karen. Shana says he just did his job. Drew, I think the locksmith is in the wrong because locksmith should be more diligent about getting proof of residency. Cody, locksmith acted as official duty. Thus, I'm sure the policy to verify his residence. All right. Okay. Josh says, how could locksmith just open up any doors? So Sarah asked a good question. Sarah Levy, what is the typical protocol for a locksmith? Surely should have asked for some sort of identification. Morgan says, door could have been smashed in. If someone has the intention to steal, they will. This guy is just accessory. So you're saying he wasn't really necessary. She could have got it another way. All right. Lauren says, I've repossessed cars before, and if you don't verify it's the right car, it's grand theft auto, no different here. Okay, interesting. So the verdict is, we have guys one more. Locksmith only because he shouldn't have left without payment. If he got paid, then it wouldn't be his fault. Okay, interesting. Easy to verify with cars, VIN numbers, and homes. Excellent point, Hannah. All right. What's the verdict? Here we go. The verdict is it depends on where you live and what the industry standards are for locksmiths in that particular place. Believe it or not, every city has their own rules about the industry of locksmiths and when you have to check IDs and for what purpose. And every city has a rule. Some have a rule one way, some rule another way, like a custom. Excellent. Rules, custom, the industry. And it's not the same across the board. So some cities and some communities, the custom is, and the industry standard is, that you check IDs before opening doors. And in other cities and other communities, the custom is you do not check IDs. And therefore, whether or not the locksmith is liable depends on where the case took place. And in this particular situation, the case took place in a city where the standard was to show ID, that you did check ID before opening up doors. And therefore, since the locksmith did not check the ID, even though he probably was just being sensitive because it's pouring rain outside and the poor kids are getting wet, but at the end of the day, he was scammed, but he still did not follow his due diligence, and therefore it's his insurance company that has to deal with it. All right, I think we have time for just one more case. Let's take a look here. What could our final case be? All right, final case. Am I also a lawyer? I am not a lawyer, but as I said, if a person studies in yeshiva, they end up obtaining skills that many lawyers want. And that's one of the reasons why rabbis tend to get into law schools at a very high rate. Yes, Karen, Talmud learning equals law degree. Very good. Very well said. Okay, so our final case here, we'll use David again. David is having a party at his house, actually Sheva Brachos, which is a festive meal that happens after a wedding, and he orders rolls, about 120 rolls for Shabbos, for the Sabbath, for these meals. And he goes to a bakery to place his order, and he asks them to deliver it to his home, and they deliver it to his home. They drop off the challah rolls at his front door because no one's home. They knock on the door, no one's home. They leave them in front. Now, his home is actually, the door to his home is right next door to, the walkway is really two doors. It's his door, and his next door neighbor, Michael, also has a door there. They're next door neighbors, and they leave it in front, closer to David's door, but it's right next to Michael's door as well. Now, Michael happened to be a very big Baal Chesed. He was someone that did a beautiful service for the community. He helped out poor people by bringing over free food. And many people would sometimes bring him leftover food and other foods and things like that, or just buy him gifts so he could give it and distribute it to poor people. So Michael comes home and he sees this box of 120 fresh challah rolls. He says, wow, what a beautiful gift for the poor people. This is so nice. And but he's thinking, it's Friday afternoon already. Who can he bring it to on such short notice, such a large quantity of rolls? And he realizes there's a yeshiva, actually, nearby, where they don't have that much money there. They don't have such fresh food there. So he goes over there and brings them 120 fresh challah rolls to enhance their Shabbos. Yes, David's having a rough life. It's not the same David every time. Don't worry, Shana. So he brings them the fresh challah rolls, the yeshiva, and meantime, David comes home and he sees there are no rolls. The store is closed already. It's too late, and they have to go through their whole Shabbos celebration with no rolls. The yeshiva has a great Shabbos. The boys consume these wonderful challah rolls, and by the time Shabbos is over, everyone figures out what happens. And the question now for the Jewish court is, who absorbs this loss? Okay, we have several options here. Option one is David is the one who absorbs the loss. He perhaps should have been more clear about how to deliver it, where to put it, that kind of thing, what kind of neighbor he has, and therefore too bad for him. Option two is Michael, who took challahs that don't belong to him. He may have had good intentions, but at the end of the day, these were not his challahs. He stole someone else's property without intent, perhaps without ill intent, but he's the one that has to pay for it. Option three, the bakery. The bakery did a poor job of, I guess, leaving it very clearly marking that belongs to David and no one else. And option four, at the end of the day, who consumed these rolls? Who was the one who ate them? It is the boys in the yeshiva. Perhaps they are responsible to pay. So that is the question. Any questions? So they were not labeled. Food all belongs to Hashem, yes, but he allows us to partake. All right, so Michael or bakery, since they were the ones who made the errors. The bakery, delivery person misdelivered the items. Michael, because he took something that wasn't his. Michael, the bakery, did what was expected. The yeshiva thought it was charity. David never received his challahs. There was no way for Michael to know they weren't for him, therefore he shouldn't pay. Good point, Moses. In the end, it went to the needy. The bakery should have labeled. I feel like the bakery, says Goldie Baum. Yeshiva shouldn't have to pay, says Moses. Okay, if the bakery did not mark Simon's name, it's the bakery's fault, says Sarah. The bakery should. Okay, Michael is acting in good faith based on past circumstances. Good point, Graham. Why would Michael have ever thought they were for him, Karen? Because Michael runs a pantry, essentially, for the needy. So he's used to getting things dropped off for him. When food property, but when it comes to food, it is property, but it's also tzedakah in this case. No, and financially, Michael is responsible to repay. But if David accepts the situation, it becomes a mitzvah. Excellent questions, Josie Ian Vega. Again, I'm sorry I'm not pronouncing your first name. The bakery is a business establishment that should be running itself efficiently. If they fail to do so, they should have to be accountable. The bakery, I say split it responsibility in thirds. Maybe they could split the cost. Too much responsibility to go around. Okay, excellent points, everyone. All right, so let's do this one step at a time. There are a lot of people involved in this process here. And if one were to, let's just go to the yeshiva boys first. I know no one really thinks the yeshiva boys should have to pay. But in theory, if no one made any mistakes, if everyone had done everything perfectly correct here, and it was just complete human error that led to the yeshiva boys getting it, then it is possible the yeshiva boys would be required to pay not the price of the challahs, only the price of what they would have paid for the challahs. Meaning a yeshiva boy on a light budget is probably would not pay the regular going rate of, I don't know, $2 a challah roll. But he might be willing to pay 20 cents. If you told him, hey, for 20 cents, would you take a challah roll? Yeah, sure, I would do that. So in theory, if everyone did everything correctly with no errors, then the yeshiva boys would have been required to pay whatever was they consider a fair rate, maybe 20 cents, 10 cents on the dollar kind of deal. However, in this case, there was one major mistake that happened. A few of you suggested some of the mistakes, but the biggest error in this case was actually David's. If you live next door to a gemach, next door to a food pantry, next door to a place that collects and receives deliveries all the time for the poor people, then it is your responsibility to inform the bakery and perhaps even inform your neighbor as well. I am getting a delivery of 120 challahs, so please, don't take those. Those are for me. But because David did not inform the bakery about this, nor did he inform his neighbor about that, it was reasonable for the bakery to leave it in that area closer to him. Usually a neighbor's not going to just grab 120 challahs out of nowhere. And it's reasonable for Michael to assume they were for him because he gets deliveries all the time. So in this case, again, as someone said earlier, poor David. David is out of luck. And we are basically out of time. So I really want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to learn with you. First of all, I want to thank you for doing this program. I know I spoke with many of you beforehand, and others of you saw the campaign, the social media campaign, and other things that we shared about this online opportunity. And thank you very much, Ivy and Karen. And the fact that you guys followed through, there were thousands and thousands of people that saw the social media campaign and heard about the program and even applied to the program. Many weren't accepted, but those of you that actually applied and followed through and are doing the program and are here now studying with us, even during spring break, right before Passover, is truly amazing. It's extraordinary. I want to thank you guys for being so amazing and such great participants. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the program and wish you all a healthy and happy Passover.
All right. Thanks, Rabbi. That was awesome. Woo! All right, everybody. Everybody give it up for Rabbi Tuli Brick. Put your hands together. That was fantastic. You did already. Okay, great. Here, I'm just sharing the link to the quiz with y'all. Make sure to do that. And we will see. Next week is Passover, but we don't stop. So we will be having class Monday night, same bad time, same bad channel. And everybody, if you can do me a favor, because I'm not going to be grading the quizzes over the Passover holiday, so you can get them in beforehand. I know you really have until Sunday to do them, but you can get them in like by Thursday. You don't have to get them in later; it's fine. But the people who get them in earlier, I'll be your friend forever. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rabbi Bricks, and we will see you all next week. Hasta la vista, baby. And Chag Sameach, Chag Kosher V'Sameach, happy Passover.